Welcome to You, Me, Empathy, a safe place for leading with your heart. Hey, thanks for being here. You, Me, Empathy is the official podcast of the Feely Human Collective, a collaborative mental health community designed to empower each of us to grow our capacity for empathy, vulnerability, and emotional wayfinding. Just a friendly reminder that this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. No one is just a silly boy with a feely heart. You can support the show by leaving a review in Apple Podcasts, following us on social media at Yumi Empathy and Feely Human, and joining the Feely Human Collective community at feelyhuman.co. And now your host, Known Wells.
Hello, Feely Humans. Welcome to Yumi Empathy, and welcome to 2022. Oh my goodness. It is a new year. Happy New Year. I hope you are safe and well and feeling feely. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here with me and this podcast and Feely Human for another year. Very grateful for you. This episode is episode 208 on grief dreams. That's right, grief dreams. It's amazing, I promise. With Dr. Joshua Black. Dr. Joshua Black and I explore how our dreams can connect us deeper to our emotions and our empathy, the powerful role that dreams have played in Joshua's relationship with his deceased father, why sometimes we remember our dreams and sometimes we don't, and the fascinating and profound world of grief dreams. Really loved this conversation. Wonderful stories from Joshua and his experience and his research as a doctor. It's really fascinating. Hope you love it. Before we get to the episode, though, I have one very exciting announcement, which is starting on January 21st, I am launching it's available to you now to sign up, but the first check-in is January 21st. I am introducing the Emotional Check-In series, Accountability for Your Heart. It's called the Emotional Check-In. If you listen to this show, you know that we start every episode with an emotional check-in. This is a series. It'll be monthly, the third Friday of every month, starting January 21st. In 20 or so days, starting January 21st. It'll be monthly. On the third Friday of every month, we get together for an hour or so to reflect, to heal and deepen our growth and connection through vulnerability and empathy and curiosity. And it will be a safe space for you and us all to share our brights and darks and everything in between that make up our beautiful feely humanity. If you're looking for a consistent space to be seen and heard as your whole self, the Emotional Check-In series is for you. I hope you can join us. It is $60 for the year. That translates to $5 per month. If you can't make it every month, that's okay. I believe it's still worth your heart. I think your heart will thank you. This is a bit of an experiment, but it's also, if you want some regular sort of time through the virtual space, through Zoom, to connect really vulnerably and openly with other feely humans, other highly sensitive humans, I encourage you to sign up. I will be hosting each one. Again, it starts on January 21st, and I really, really hope to see you there. There's no cap on the number of people. I hope we can get as many as possible. That would be wonderful. Let's grow it this year. Let's do this. This will be fun. So the Emotional Check-In series is available. To learn more, link is in the show notes for this episode, as well as on the website. If you go to feelyhuman.co and click on the little orange bar at the top there, you can go there, or you can go to feelyhuman.co and hover over the workshops tab in the main menu and click on Emotional Check-In. And you can sign up there, fill out the form. It'll redirect you to purchase the series for the year for 2022. let's do our hearts better in 2022. Let's connect deeper in our empathy. Let's connect deeper in our vulnerability. And I hope you love it as much as I do. So I hope to see you there. Again, kicks off January 21st. It's available to sign up now. Hope to see lots of signups and love to see you soon. So anyways, again, that's at feelyhuman.co. Very excited about that. Please leave a rating and review for this podcast and Apple Podcasts. Does help out the show. Still trying to get to 200 ratings. We're getting there slowly, very slowly, but I believe we'll get there. Thank you for doing that. It does help out the show. And patreon.com/feelyhuman is a way to support me on an ongoing basis where you get a monthly bonus episode of this podcast each month. The last bonus episode was with my dear friend Wolf Terry. We talked about vaccine hesitancy and the work that she's doing in science communication and yoga, and we also talk about Christmas movies, which was fun. Anyways, that's at patreon.com/feelyhuman. Support me there. Anyways, let's get to the episode. I am blabbing on. It is 2022. I want to do less blabbing in 2022, but we'll see. Anyways, I love you. Thank you for being here. Let's get to episode 208 on grief dreams with Dr. Joshua Black. Welcome to You, Me, Empathy, the official podcast of the Feely Human Collective. On this show, we explore the struggles, the triumphs, the brights and the darks we face as humans trying to get by on this wondrous and overwhelming pale blue dot. The intent of You, Me, Empathy is to talk openly without judgment about our mental health, our neuroses, our shared anxieties and worries, to create a dialogue that is vulnerable and deeply human and empathetic, and to share that dialogue with others to inspire emotional and cognitive collaboration and insight so we can, hand in hand, break down the stigma that make us feel shame and guilt for struggling, for feeling our feelings, for being feely humans. You, Me, Empathy is a safe, friendly space designed to inspire the beauty in each of us. Today, it's a dream to be here because I'm with Grief Dreams writer, researcher, and Freddy Krueger's mortal enemy, Dr. Joshua Black. Hello, Joshua.
Hi, I like that. That's a great introduction.
I mean, I try to insert silly jokes from time to time, and when I thought dreams, and it made me, it was October recently, and then of course I thought about Nightmare on Elm Street, etc. I'm sure you get that all the time.
Yeah, you do, but no one's ever went there in the beginning. So I think that it's great, and you're right. Like with what Freddy Krueger's doing, I think the research is showing the opposite. He doesn't have the effect that I think a lot of people think he does.
Okay, that's intriguing. I let's put a pin in that. So before we get to it, though, I want to hear how you're doing. We do an emotional check-in. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling okay. Sitting with, I guess, the best way to put it is joy, which can be very difficult for me in many ways. And then also sitting with a dream I had last night. I think it was because I was preparing for this show and understanding what was coming on here. So I had a dream of my father that was, I guess, more negative than the other dreams I've had of him. And so sitting with that imagery and what it represents was just something I needed to do this morning.
And have your dreams in the past mostly about your father been sort of in the positive vein, and this was sort of a different one, something you haven't experienced before?
Yeah, so for the most part, they've been very positive and very uplifting. I had one negative dream maybe a couple years after he died, but that was really it. And he's been, gone for over 10 years now. But yeah, this one was so the dream I had was him, and then there was this woman I was talking to, and there was me, and I was talking to this lady, and my father came over and basically dragged the lady away very forcefully. And I woke up, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And just thinking about it, my dad had a lot of difficulties with women in many ways, and a lot of beliefs that he's had really shaped my view of women and the world in many ways, that they're not to be trusted, people shouldn't be trusted, the world's out to get you, that sort of thing. And so it's been like one of those things that you continue to deal with. And when we're talking about sort of our emotions and our neuroses, this is sort of part of the whole thing, you sort of, that made me look at my dad again. And it's always hard facing the truth about who people are, even after they die, because you almost want to like romanticize them in a way. But just, as much as I love him, he had some really wild beliefs that hindered a lot of parts of me being my biggest potential, but also the people he met, like my mom, and how she was treated. And you're like, wow, like it's just like I couldn't have been her and stayed in that relationship based on who he was as an individual. Like he didn't know how to sit with emotions. He drank a lot to cope. He had some past trauma he never looked at. So, and I was afraid of him for the most part of my childhood. So that just brings back to some of those aspects of him that you kind of don't remember when you're thinking about, the person who's died.
That's so interesting. Thank you for sharing that. You're right. We do romanticize people after they're gone because for many reasons. I think one of the reasons is it's easier, right? It's like we don't want to think badly about the deceased, right? Even if there are people in our lives who were hard or complicated, etc. I think what I have found to be true for me and what I have found to be kind of healing is when that happens. And it's, meaning like when someone who has passed had a complicated life, to try to like honor it all, right? To try to like understand that yes, they were a human, yes, they were a father, yes, they were these things, yes, they had these values, and some of these things weren't great, right? And they don't cancel each other out. They're just the picture of a human, right?
Well, yeah, it's like loving all of it. And that's just who he was. And there's some great times, there's some very horrifying times. But I still miss him. And it's one of those weird things where a lot of people say, I miss him, and they always talk about these loving qualities. But like, I'm also like, there's got to be a part of me and is absolutely missing the other part of that too. And it's just like understanding that right. Like relationships are complex, and the relationships are complex, and you have to revisit them every now and then to just, I think, get a better understanding of who you are and what the relationship was all about for you as you move forward, because he was a big part of why I am who I am mentally and also physically, like here. But like, the belief structure I have, I really looked up to him in many ways. And in the dream, actually, when he took her away, I forgot to mention this part, just came back to me. So he took her away, and I stood up to him. I said, I'm trying to look up to you, but you keep doing stupid shit like this all the time. And then I walked away. And so it goes back to that, like, there's a part of me that really wants to look up to him as a kid. It looks up to his father.
Right.
But when you look at it, you're just like, I can't. Like, like, we can be friends, but like, I just can't put you on that pedestal as much as I want to. And, you're human. I think that's the hardest thing for me as I work through my grief, was really putting him on a human level rather than a father pedestal level.
Yeah. I was going to say that is, that's some deep grief right there, right? Because, I relate so deeply to that because I also had my father's still alive, but we don't have a relationship. Very hard person, like very difficult. I was scared a lot, and I don't have him on a pedestal. I don't look up to him in any way. And I'm sort of reflecting on your experience and wondering, I wonder if that will change when he goes, right? I wonder if that will change when he passes, when he dies, right? Like that's an interesting thing to explore. But what I'm curious to hear from you, Joshua, is like you mentioned being scared a lot or sort of hiding a lot, and then also this part of you that looks up to him, that like admires him, that, you know, how do you reconcile those two pieces?
Well, I mean, you just sit with the truth of it all. I think that's the hardest part, is just sit with the reality of it and try not to make excuses, but you're just sitting with it. And so, like, my relationship with him is a little different than I think even some of my other siblings, because like we were all afraid of him for the most part, and it really didn't.
Was he
change.
Violent?
Well, he yelled a lot. Like he wanted, and you know, back then, like he used a belt and all, you know, like.
Yeah,
like, you know, that was the type of personality. That's what he got from his parents, right? So like that was just like what people did. But as much as he did that, I think the biggest thing was he just wasn't there emotionally. He didn't go to like basketball games. He didn't like a lot of my stuff. My mom did, and so we never really had that really kind of like communication. And so we never had a dinner table we ate at. We just sat in front of the TV. He always told us to be quiet. So like you're in this thing, and then when he drank, it was just, he was more, I guess, confrontational to people, especially my mom. And so there's a lot of blowouts that occurred because of that. And so it was a very unsafe environment I guess I would say, for the most part of my childhood, because I was that day more attached to my mom. And my mom was the one that was, you could tell, was very scared and would try to protect the kids in many ways. I remember always listening in to like at the door or on the floor. Sometimes because I moved to the attic, it was furnished and stuff, but like
little Harry Potter in the attic or the
yeah. So I remember listening in the ground because I just wanted to sort of make sure my mom was okay, but I was totally terrified because he was a big guy, and there's nothing I could have done to I think help. I think you get that helplessness and. And so, with that was through the whole life. So I never really had a bond with him in any real way until I think 2 years before he died. So him and my mom split up. And then I started to just see him, to sort of see how he's doing, to understand his rationale, what happened and everything like that. And to get them a more fuller picture of the story of why he was who he was. Because at that time I started to go to university and I was taking psychology. So I started learning more about the mind and learning about myself. And I was very curious on like why he was the way he was, rather than just blaming him. Like, what's your past like? And like, let's talk a little bit more. And
it's very empathetic.
Thanks.
It's hard to do, right? Like, yeah. I think, I mean, I'll just interrupt. You can resume, but like, I think it is an important clarification or an important piece of information. Like I've had to do it with my own family, is like recognizing that, yes, shit that they do is shit and shouldn't be done. And also a piece of that puzzle is where they came from and their past, their experiences, their childhood, etc. Right?
It's a huge part.
Yeah.
Just like it was a huge part for me. Like without understanding my past, I would never have understood the effect it had on me. And that's why I can look at my father and be curious and want to know, and also have that compassion once I learned some stuff that I never knew. It's not like he's just a person that had a perfect life and all of a sudden like he's against me. No, like, he's against himself. And it's like, this is how it's coming out. And that's what I learned about myself. It's like a lot of my behaviors were stemming from deep-rooted issues. And I wasn't intentionally trying to hurt people, but it was coming across in many ways like that. So when they did split up and separated, he started treating me differently. So he started asking about me more. He wanted to do things like go to the movies or go eat dinner somewhere. And so he had a more, I guess, I felt like more of a friendship kind of bond that he was making, rather than like the father, I got to teach you how to survive. It was very different and it's like the person I've always wanted only happened when I was like older. And so we had 2 years of really trying to make this bond a little bit stronger. And I enjoyed the conversations we had. And he was a funny guy, and that's something I didn't really see a lot in the house, because he was always trying to make sure everyone was, I guess, safe and protected. But he was actually a really funny guy. And so I really enjoyed hanging out with him. And then, so like 2 years after we sort of really started connecting, that's when he died. And I think that's where a lot of the sadness comes in, because I was finally getting something I really wanted for the last 20 some years, 24 years, and now it's gone. And so it brought a lot of that up, back up to the surface. And I think that's what I grieved most when he did pass.
What did you, in addition to him, sort of you reflecting on him being a funny guy, like what else did you learn about his past, his experience?
His mom was, she taught the way that most people taught back then. And a lot of his behaviors on what he felt was appropriate in the household, he got from her. So it's not like he had a role model in his own life on how to be gentle. It was a different life back then. And I understand that. And he was dealing with a lot of pain. And, the more I get older, the more I have to sit with pain in different joints and different ways. And, he had to sit with that. And at that time, the best methods for coping for males anyways, that was socially appropriate, was alcohol. And so alcohol wasn't his friend. Some people get very joyful in alcohol. He became more aggressive and more confrontational, and he would start like bar fights. Like that's the kind of guy he was. And so, you add those things together, and then he worked nights on top of it as an engineer. So he's not getting a good sleep because he has 4 kids I have 3 other siblings. So he has 4 kids in the household that don't understand why you're sleeping during the day. And so you look back and like, yeah, he's probably so tired. He's telling us to be quiet because we were loud, like 4 kids and like all on the main floor. And so what happens, he wakes up, he yells, he gets angry, but he's also then sleep deprived. And then so that hinders your, emotional reactions and become more negative, and he's more frustrated. So he's not coming to the family like just as on an equal playing field. He's exhausted, and he has old models that are governing behaviors, and he has a really poor way of coping. Mm-hmm. And he's not the one that would just talk to anyone about his feelings either. So he would just socialize and talk about, sports or whatever. So, you add those together, like I can understand even more now than ever before. And also my mom was sick for the most part of my childhood. She had issues, and she couldn't be, I guess, the mother that she always wanted to be. But at the end of the day, he had to take on a lot of responsibilities that I think he thought she was going to take over. So with 4 kids, working nights, and my mom in the hospital for a couple of years, in and out, like that's a lot of pressure to work through. And for someone who didn't have a strong base to begin with about who they were themselves and how to control their emotions, it was a lost cause. And so you look at that, I'm like, and I have great compassion that he did the best he could, and I understand that. But I also understand that, when he did have time to look at himself, he never did. So it's like, even when he was separated. So, you see that, and it's just like, as in my mind, I'm like, how can I just become a better person in this world, knowing that all these factors really hindered him? Now that I can see it, like, what can I do for myself and look at myself so I can be a better person to say it is possible? Because it was so easy for me to judge him and say, you should have done this, you should have done that. But if I'm not willing to change myself, how can I even expect someone like him to even change? And I realized when I started to try to change some of my own neuroses, it's so difficult. It's so hard. So hard. They're so ingrained. And like, there's like a secret approach. And that's why like dreams have really helped me, because I think I know who I am, but you really don't. And the dreams in my life is the thing that actually helped me the most to understand where my, I guess, ties or neuroses were, and maybe what the weaker ones were I should conquer first, to then help other ones fall off and moving forward. Because a lot of times we'll pick one and maybe the strongest, and it may not be the one that can fall away so easily. It's like, maybe you should choose something else first so we can loosen that other one, that major one. And so, and that I think has helped me along the way. And it just gives me more compassion for everyone I meet. And you just realizing how human we are, and not everyone it takes a lot of courage to change, because as I've found out, as you change, your friends will change. They may not want to hang out with you anymore. Your family may not like you anymore. There's a lot of things that go along with you changing a core of who you are, what you like, what you visit, like everything changes, what music you listen to, it all changes. And so you're going to be like a new person, and that new person may not even like the friends you do have or who the people around you are, and you'll be kind to them, but maybe not someone you reach out to as you once did.
There's a lot of grief in change, right? And transformation, right? Because you naturally leave people behind, as you're growing into this space and they're not, and it doesn't work anymore. And that's the hard part of change. But as you know, it's necessary. We need it. We have to have it, right? to do better, right? Each generation. Yeah. How did your dad pass? How did he die?
Well, I know his heart gave out. They found him on the floor dead. And so, he had a lot of different issues. He had a recent fall from a boiler, and he was on morphine patches. And so, there's probably a couple different factors, but the overall thing was that his heart died. And, that's really all, I don't exactly, I'm not really into the science of exactly what happened.
Sure.
But it's okay, I get it, right? That's what happened. And so he was in his bathroom, so he must have woke up and went, and he just died instantly.
Wow. And that was how long ago when he died? 10 years ago, you said?
Well, it's about 12 years now, yeah.
12 years, okay.
Yeah.
And what, tell me about as, you're describing this experience where you're, for the first time in your life, you're connecting with him for a period of 2 years, and then he passes. Tell me a little bit about sort of the first year after that, and what was going on in your head and your heart.
Mm-hmm. So when I first got the call that he died, it completely shook me. It was the first real loss or significant loss in my life. And so it completely took me off guard. And the first thing I did, it was just start crying. And I just wanted to stop, because I was also mimicking my father in many ways. The last time I cried was probably a kid. It just didn't happen, right? Guys don't cry, you're tougher, blah, blah. And so when the tears started coming, I couldn't stop them. And that was very frustrating in many ways. And I didn't know what was going on in my body. It was just so foreign, is the best way to put it. And so it got me a little scared, because I didn't know how to sit with that at that point in my life. And so I was lucky I had a partner at that time, and she was able to sit with me a little bit, but it just still kept coming. And then throughout the planning of the funeral, which was on my birthday, because we were supposed to actually go visit, and he was supposed to take me out for my birthday, and that's when he never showed up. And then the next day I got this phone call that he died. But then, so that added a little complexity to it too. And then the funeral, I did a eulogy, and that was very hard to do, but I was glad I was able to do that. And then the next day I went back to school, because I was in undergrad that time, and the crying stopped. So the thing I wanted so bad, it finally stopped. I was like, yes. And so I went back, everything was normal. People gave their condolences, and as I say, I was fine. But really, what was very interesting looking at that period of time was I wanted the tears to stop, and they did. But what happened with that was wasn't feeling any sadness anymore. So I kind of felt like people on the external world saw I was doing okay, but I wasn't feeling any joy inside either. Yeah. So I really I would say, I would be depressed. I wasn't feeling really anything. The best way to put it is all the color came out of my world. And it was for about 3 months. And I didn't think I could change it. I thought, this is just what it is. This is life now. And so you go to school, you go to work. And so it was pretty busy. So it's not something I was sitting with a lot. But I did notice it. And then I had this dream 3 months later, which is completely changed me. And I still don't fully understand to this day, but something happened in that moment that changed me. And so the dream was, I was in my room, and I looked at across the room, and I saw my father, and he was looking healthy again. And he looked really light. The best way to put it is he didn't have the troubles weighing on him like he always did. So it's almost the calmest he's ever been in a way. And, he was wearing this, ragged Labatt blue T-shirt that he always used to wear. Like he would get in the beer cases, or whatever. Right? And so he was dressed like that. He wasn't in all white like some people describe in the dream of the deceased.
Sure.
And he was looking through some of my stuff. And so when I saw him, I got up and I walked up to him and he turned around, he was smiling. And I said, "I'm going to miss you," acknowledging the loss. And I said that I loved him. And we hugged. And when I woke up, but when I woke up, I felt the color back in my body or in my life.
Wow.
And so which really, and I sat at the end of my bed thinking, what was that? Because I just had 3 months of it. It was like, this is just how it is. And this dream changed everything. And it wasn't that I was interpreting the dream. I just felt the reaction from having the dream. And I still sit in the mystery of that in many ways, because there's something about that content and that feeling from the dream that changed me without me consciously trying to change it in waking life. Because it's one thing if I was working on it and maybe going through a therapist and then it happened. So it was like the subtle change, but I didn't even know I could change it. I just, like it was just something that happened. So for me, like that was the biggest moment to understand the value of these dreams. But there's something going on in that moment. And I still don't know what it is. But looking back and doing all the research I've done, with the bereaved, I can now understand that I got a chance to say goodbye, which is something that I never had a chance to do. He died so suddenly. I got a chance to tell him I loved him, which is something last time I told him I loved him was when I was a kid, probably.
Yeah.
It was 4 or 5. And so I didn't understand how much I longed for that. And so that was really big. But also there's this other core element that you sort of see in a lot of other dreams that change people from all walks of life. And there's just this like love and peace in the imagery. And that was part of it. It felt so beautiful. It was probably the most peaceful dream I've ever had in my entire life. It's the best way to put it. So a lot of people say it was just love, or it's just but I knew he was dead, and yet there's this love, there's this peace that's upon the whole moment. And maybe that's a key. Like maybe that provides enough for the mind to regroup, because it's so bombarded with anxieties and stress. Maybe that's a part of why meditation works so well for people, is because you're trying to get to maybe that kind of state. But yeah, I don't know, but it's still a mystery. But it completely changed from that moment on. And I don't know if people noticed, but I felt it inside. And I said, like a lot of my dreams after that were very positive. But that's when I knew the beauty of these dreams as I move forward.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's powerful. It's a powerful image, just to listen to as a story in your experience, and as a dream. Like it's like we'll get into this, but like I've had a handful of very vivid dreams that will probably live with me forever in my life. And usually I don't remember my dreams. And the one that you described is like, what's really profound about it, and the way I'm reflecting about it, is like, one, it's giving you this opportunity to express and say the things that you're robbed of, which is so beautiful, right? And then there's this other piece of it, you describing your father as light and unburdened. It's like you're seeing him in the way that you had always wanted to see him, right? Which is such a beautiful thing. And I just like, wow, like I'm just in awe that happened even.
Like me too. And it couldn't have came at a better time. And
Yeah.
like like my family never really talked about dreams in itself. So even me valuing dreams was, I think, a big part of also the journey in a way. Like before that, like I grew up, the other big thing I should probably mention too, is I grew up in a household that was very Christian, is the best way to put it, but the way they talked about it was, when it came to dreams anyways, that dreams were from the devil. So that's how I grew up.
Oh,
and
wow.
so I had a lot of nightmares, as you could probably expect, given in an unsafe environment. So dreams really reflect our waking life. And so because you're in an unsafe environment, you're going to have a lot of negative dreams. A lot of my dreams were about people chasing me in the house and me trying to find an escape route. And so those
Wow.
people were actually, if you actually dive deep, they're actually my father, right? And just basically, but not in the image of my father. They'd be like Navy SEALs or like robbers or something else.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
really, it's just my father because he was always drunk. And for safety, my mind's trying to rehearse what's the best approach to avoid my father to be secure, right? So that's what my mind's always been replaying. So, anyways, when I had those dreams, my parents would say they're from the devil. And so I didn't value dreams, but I had a dream.
Wow.
Yeah. So if
It's
I had
dismissive and gaslighty. I hate it.
it didn't help. Yeah. So I don't recommend people telling their kids that, but they didn't know the research, and the research wasn't really prevalent at that time either. Like dream
Right.
research has only really taken off in the last, I said, like maybe 10, 15 years. And a lot of people started understanding what dreams do really reflect. And so, for them, they just talked to their pastor, and that's what someone told them, and they just regurgitated thinking it's truth. But now we know it's not. And so it actually reflected, the environment I was living in, and me trying to process that. Anyway, so I didn't want to remember dreams because I was scared by them.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have any interest in dreams until when was it? Right after high school. I had like another significant loss that actually was more, I don't know if it's more, it was different. It was the first time I had a really serious breakup. And that breakup completely crushed me. And I took it differently. So it was a different kind of grief at that point. And I couldn't eat or sleep for days. It was a different, like I could, like, even though I was crying with my dad, I could still sleep. But for this one, I couldn't sleep. And I can't remember if I was crying or not, but I was very angry. I remember I was very angry. Because she called and she said she cheated on me. And that's the reaction. That's the reaction.
Yeah.
But I couldn't get it out of my body or like my mind. And I was struggling so bad with that one. That time I actually knew I needed help in some way. And I was trying everything that I knew at that time as a kid. I remember even taking my brother's guitar and trying to like make a sad song because that's what people do.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one way to process emotions. Yeah.
Doesn't work. It didn't work for me. I tell you, it did not work for me. And so I went to bed, and because we grew up in this Christian home, so I prayed, and I said, I just prayed to anyone. Like, I'm like, is this even real? But I was like, I just need to understand why I feel this way, because it was completely killing me in the inside. And I needed to know what it was just so I could know what to do with it. And it was interesting because when I look back, I never asked if there was a guy. I never asked, take this away. I said, give me understanding of why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. And so anyways, I had a dream. It was the first dream that actually had any kind of meaning in my life. And so the dream was me, like I was this reporter, and I was running by this stream, and it was the longest dream I've ever had. It felt like it was like 8 hours. I was just running and running, like over hills and under bridges, and it ended up into this ocean. Like it opened up into this huge ocean, and I was looking frantically, like where is it? Like I'm looking for something. And then there was this pier, and there was someone standing at the pier. So I ran over to the pier, and it was this gentleman. And, he looked pretty wise, those people who just they just have this like aura about them. They know something. And so I ran up and I said, where is it? Where is it? And then he looked at me with those, very wise, mystical kind of eyes. And he said, it could be over there pointing to the left of the ocean. It could be over there pointing to the right. Could be over there. And he pointed like just straight out into the ocean. And then he said, but you know where it truly is? I said, where? And he pointed to his mind. And the moment he pointed to his mind, I woke up like a bolt of lightning went through me. It was the craziest experience. And I also knew what the dream meant, which is something I couldn't say I knew anything about dream interpretation or how symbols represent anything. But when I woke up, I knew exactly what it meant. And so what he was referring to was the pain was coming from my mind and how I was perceiving the events. But not only that, but how I perceive myself. That was a more important thing. And so the core of why I was feeling the way I was feeling was because I didn't love who I was. And the way the breakup happened with the cheating, what it was doing was bringing out this truth that I couldn't hold or acknowledge. And the acknowledgement was that I didn't love myself. And my attachment to her was really based on feeling loved and feeling good enough in a way. Especially you say that chaotic environment around me. I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel like I have the support. And then you have this woman that you kind of get that from. And so it represented a lot within me that I never would have thought otherwise. And so for me, I sat with that. And then my next question was, well, then how can I learn to love who I am? And then that led me to looking at these dreams, to teaching me a little bit more and looking at my behaviors in life, to understanding how that deep core neurosis actually infiltrated everything I was doing in life. And it's like, how do you deal with that in a kind way, right? Because and so that's the big process with that. And then when I got to my dad's dream, it was a different kind of understanding, right? And a different kind of feeling, so I already knew dreams had a little bit more meaning. I knew I could utilize this a little bit more to understand myself as I move forward too in the grieving process. I forget what the question was, but that's sort of like the story of like how the dreams, how I first knew, how I was learned about dreams, but then how I actually saw dreams having meaning. And it was actually just, once again, a dream that told me that it was meaningful.
I love that. And I love that you were able to transition out of like dreams being messengers from, Satan. Good for you. That's wonderful. So after you have, like, when did the real sort of like, all right, I need to like know more about dreams and dig into that? When did that research start for you?
Well, it'd be right after I had that dream of after that breakup.
Okay.
Is when I really started pursuing, maybe dreams have more meaning. And I started pursuing, what else are dreams actually trying to tell me if it's not the devil, and maybe they do have some meaning. And so I would buy these dream dictionaries, I'd buy some stuff, but I realized that it wasn't really helpful at all. And so a lot of it was just learning this new language that my mind was almost trying to teach itself and processing it. I remember I would spend hours just looking at the image. I felt it meant something. I would just look at it and look at it, just hours at a time, especially at night, and just trying to figure out, how is this reflecting my waking life, and how can I utilize this as I move forward.
At what image? Sorry, I missed that.
The dream. So like the dreams itself that
got it.
That I remember, that it kind of has a feeling that there's more to it than just like it's a part of your everyday experience, like something you watch on TV, but it actually feels a little bit more meaningful. I would sit with that and I'm trying to understand it and relate it to life. And what I found is, if you start, for me anyways, I started at the emotion. So what's the emotion coming from that dream? And then try to pinpoint it in waking day life to understand where it's actually reflecting. And then there's usually clues and to help problem solve that event, or to give you a deeper understanding of why that event is, I guess, pulling you in such a way. Because as much as I wanted to love myself, the world was still there and I still had the same neuroses. And so I was being pulled in many directions. And a lot of times there's a part of me that didn't want to change. As you said, like, it's so hard to, it's one thing to acknowledge that you need help. It's another thing to actually change.
Yeah.
And so it was a constant like battle that you're just constantly trying to become more and not give up. And you just keep pursuing, almost it feels like you just keep banging on the same wall, but you realize you're actually knocking bricks off. And I can't tell you, okay, like now, this is when everything happened. But I know when my father died, I was a huge step away from where I was when I started. It was about 3 years. There's a 3-year gap there. And even to this day, I'm still trying to love myself. As I said, like it's not something that you can just like, you do or you don't. But I understand I have more compassion, more kindness for myself as I've moved forward through this. And, working with, having my own experience with grief, as I think shifted a lot, and understanding some of the core feelings of that, and talking with people in the bereaved has really shifted too, seeing more experiences that people go through. And, and that was sort of my path. And then in whatever happened in life, I didn't really seek it out per se, but it would happen. And I would see that feeling, either there's avoidance or it's a fear or something. And I would just sit with that and try to understand, where are you coming from? Because it's not really as simple as you're trying to like, oh, it's because of this or that. Like you got to really sit with your emotions to really understand that there's a lot of things impacting it.
Right.
And that was like one of the dreams I had with my father. The negative one I had with my father is at a time where I started to realize the significance of him as a father in my life and the models that he really imprinted on me without me even knowing, because I thought they were my models. I thought I chose those, but it wasn't actually true. I just adopting something that he did because it made our relationship better. And I just, as you move forward, you just sort of feel it's your own. And so for me, so the dream anyways was he came from under the basement and with a knife, and he was trying to stab me. And he broke down this door and he was trying to stab me through this door, but he always was missing. And so that was at a point where I was trying to figure out where these beliefs were coming from in a way. And I'm like, oh, this all makes sense. This all makes sense in that. And so you start looking at your belief structure in a whole new way. And you realize that a lot of the stuff that my mom taught me, teachers, like your society, they're all just teaching you what they know. And a lot of people just don't know who they are in a way that is really self-explored. A lot of people just take for granted who they are.
Sure.
And for me, it's just taking a step back and saying, okay, wait a second. So these people have trauma, these people have their own neuroses that they can't see. And I've just picked it up. And for me, it helped me survive to that point. But can I change it? Like, I'm an adult now. Like, do I have the ability to change some of this stuff to something a little different, and even like inspect it? Is that belief still relevant today as it was when they first picked it up?
Right.
And it's not like you throw everything out. It's just like you just have to be more aware of what you're digesting. And so when life does throw you a moment in time where you get a reaction, sit with it and like try to explore it. Like, so for me, this is one of the craziest things. So it's not just negative things that stir up stuff. Even a thought of doing something nice would stir up something in me. And it's not like a positive feeling. It's a very scared feeling. Like I remember like, people used to like go through like the drive-through and buy something for like the person behind them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So I thought like someone did that to me, and I thought, oh, what if I did that to someone else? And all of a sudden this anxiety went through my body.
I'd feel the same way. I'd feel anxious about it too.
And so I was like, wow. I'm like, but at that time I was very curious about myself, and it's just like, what's happening there? Like, you're doing something nice and you're getting this reaction as if it's like the end of the world. And so I was like, well, let me try to do that. And that's sort of how I sort of really dealt with a lot of my stuff, was let me just try and see if that reaction of avoidance is justified. And so I remember doing it and still had the same emotions, sweating. And then I would pay, and then I would drive off, and then I would look in my mirror, hoping the person wasn't trying to chase me down. Like, it was just the greatest thing. And I realized,
big disconnect there.
Yeah, huge disconnect. They're probably just thanking, like, oh, what a great moment. But like, I'm afraid that they're going to like want to stop me or something.
Yeah.
And so there's a very uncomfortable place that I said, like, you could tell that I had a lot of anxiety of people's opinions of me. And it wasn't just doing it. It was their opinion of me doing it that I was afraid of. Like, what are they going to think? Are they going to think I'm trying to do something? Like, there's all those thoughts that were coming in. And that's just a lot of said, like, going back, you can sort of see, like, why do you feel like people are trying to attack you all the time? And that's just something my father really put in, because in his life, that's what he saw people as, trying to attack you, trying to take things, because he was also doing that to other people. So it makes sense. Yeah. His model is reflective of his behavior in life. Yeah. And so I'm like, man, it's so crazy. I'm like, why am I afraid to be kind to others? Like, it's just rationally didn't make any sense to me, but I could understand by sitting with it where it was coming from. So I'm like, what other kind things can I do to really try to work through this? Yeah. And so the next thing I did, I remember, was I went to a grocery store and I said, like, what about if I bought something for someone at a grocery store? Just like,
I mean, that's even more anxiety inducing, because you don't have the protection of the car.
that's exactly why I wanted to do it, because
Yeah.
I knew the car was a protection. So like,
Yeah.
what happens if you have to face someone while you're doing something nice for them?
Yeah.
So that was my next step. And I remember going into the grocery store, and I started looking for someone to buy their groceries for. I didn't really have a plan, but I was in there. I started looking. I could see my mind judging everyone who needed the money the most, who needed me to do it the most.
Mm-hmm.
And I got so fed up with my mind, I just left. I said, no, this isn't working, because I'm using my own biases, and that in itself is a horrible thing, to try to pick, who looks poorest. Like it's just, it wasn't good at all. It wasn't out of a genuine objective of the thing. It was just, you're supposed to just buy something for someone else out of kindness.
Right.
And I was like, okay, well, how can I then, do that? I was thinking in the car, I said, I got it. I'll go buy something, and whoever's in behind me, same thing with the car, right? Whoever's behind me, I'll just buy their stuff. So I can't judge it or whatever. I was like, that seems great. And so, but then I put up, but then like, because there's so much fear to even doing that, I put a caveat in there. I said, but they have to have a child.
Oh, interesting.
Right?
The child is the buffer.
Is the buffer, but it also gives me an out, because what are the odds you're gonna have someone behind you that also has a child, right? Like,
yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I understood what my mind was doing, but you play with it. You can't win every battle in the mind. So you play with it, you give it. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do that. So I think I had like an apple juice or something. I was putting it through, and I was waiting in line, and no one's behind me. I'm like, sweet. It was great. As long as they could say I tried to do it, everything's okay, and then the other person went through, still no one, and I started ringing my thing through, and still no one behind me. I was like, this is great. This is the best day. Conquered my fear somewhat. And anyway, so just as the person was ringing it through, a cart came in, and I saw the cart in the corner of my eye. I'm like, no. I'm like,
and it was just full of $20 steaks.
Full of fear. It wasn't even about the money. It was just full of fear, just facing does this card have a child?
Sure.
That was the first thing. And so as I turned, I just remember in slow motion, I see the kid's feet like in the in the cart. And as that happens, the woman at the cashier says, "Is there anything else, that what did she say? It's like, is there anything else that you need, or that you needed, or something like that?"
Yeah.
So it gave me that moment where, like, what else are you supposed to do, right? Like, everything's here that you wanted. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, yeah, ring. And then also it was, as I looked, I said, ring in, the person's stuff behind me. And as I looked, not only was it a child, but it was this huge biker dude. Like, so it was someone I never would have chose, and it was someone at that time I would have been afraid of also. And so I had like a lot of polls of saying you should run. And that's what I'm saying. Like, it really took a lot of courage in this journey. And so rang in the stuff. I don't know how much it was, but I saved myself because it was in like the 1 to 12 items aisle. Uh-huh. So I kind of like, played, I didn't have a lot of money at the time. So I think I only came to like maybe 30, 40 bucks. But anyways, rang all his stuff through, and he was shocked. He didn't know what was going on. He's like, "Oh no, this is my stuff." I said, "Oh no, I got this." And I was just looking down. I wouldn't look at him. I'm like, "Don't even say anything to me. This is hard enough. So just like go away." And so I paid, and then he was standing there like making the groceries, and he stopped me, and he said, "Why did you do that?" And I said, I didn't want to say, because this is a social experiment for myself, and this is the most anxiety-provoking thing I needed to do. But what I said was someone did something nice for me once, and I'm trying to repay it, which is true in many ways.
Yeah.
And so he looked, and he saw me, like, he was looking right at me. You could tell he was looking at me, and he said, "Well, I just wanted to say thank you. I really appreciate that." And I left, and I was in my car. I remember going to my car shaking. I was just like, that's how nervous I was. I was shaking. I'm like, I can't believe I did that. But I also learned I never would have picked that guy out of a whole group of people, of someone needing it or being that kind of kind.
Yeah.
And so it opened up a new thing of just my own biases that I had to sit with. And also the truth of, he was the most kindest individual and the best person to accept that at the same time too for my own journey. So he gave me a gift for being that. And, and then I realized I was judging him not only because he was wearing like a biker outfit, but because he was tattooed. And that was something my parents always said, that, tattooed people are the devil, or, like those are the people who are criminals. Yeah. See, like you wouldn't be cool. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, like, what do I, like moving forward? It was something I understood. And then later, I think it was a couple of years when I had enough money, I'm like, what I'm going to do? I'm going to get a tattoo, because I can't judge someone for having a tattoo if I have one myself. And so I got my own. So it's just like, but that's how I played with the world. But like, it's just one of those things that it takes a lot of courage to really, walk through some of this stuff, even such as simple as for that. For someone else, that may be so easy to them. But it's just like, for me, that was just part of my journey to really learn that the world is more safe than I gave it credit for. And also there's more to me that I don't see. And I think, who I am now to be able to speak, like I would never have been able to do this podcast 10 years ago. Like sure. I would have just been full of fear, shaking, sweating, but here I am now. And so it's amazing what happens in slow steps, and where you could look back and say, wow, like I can't believe I got this far by just focusing on this aspect of my life and taking opportunities when I can to just sit with, what is this moment trying to tell me about who I am that maybe I don't realize? And I think that's sort of the game, is just like, can you just be vulnerable enough to know that there's a lot of parts of you that you just don't know? And are you willing to learn about yourself? Like those are very challenging questions for a lot of people, because as you said, like the moment you think that you're not, that there's things to change, a lot of other people around you may not like that if you do.
I love that, and I love hearing your stories, because it you very clearly, I mean, it makes sense you're in the sort of the scientific inquiry world, because you have this brain that does that, and it's very fascinating, and it's very admirable, and I think it's exceptionally compassionate. Like, and I think you're right. I think like that is it's curiosity, right? Like, and curiosity for me is like a huge part of this. Is a key to a huge part of living, right? And healing, right? And self-awareness, ultimately, right? So the way you describe that, like, let's jump back into dreams, because tell me a little bit about, like, because I think there's this, I don't know, maybe stigma or idea that like dreams are, I don't know, hippy dippy or something, like I have this sense, like I don't necessarily believe that, but like I think I've gotten that sense, just being a person living in for 4 decades on this pale blue dot. Like I just get that sense, like why, you said before, like 10, 15 years ago, it really started, people started exploring what dreams could be. Yeah. Why do you think that is? Like, is there a stigma around it? Is there baggage around what dreams are, etc.?
I think so. And I think, there's a lot to say on that. But I think people just are not taught about it in school. And so they learn about it from movies or just people around them. And it's almost like a different language. It's like, and when you don't understand the language, you're just going to walk away and avoid it, because there's no one there trying to teach you that language. So I think for the most part, it's surrounded in a lot of mystery. And I would think, just with the data that we know, a lot of people have negative dreams. And so people maybe not really want to remember dreams that much. And they just want to push it out and avoid it, because I think that's more of the culture in itself. Yeah. And I think now you see more in movies that dreams do have some type of value, but like, you got to understand, like dreams are like not like in some like scripture and some cultures, dreams are like a lot, and a lot of people pay attention to them. But then like the Western culture really squashed that in many ways until like Freud came, and then his theories were more based on the sexual needs of people. And so it had this tainted kind of quality to it that people didn't really want to go to. And then you start seeing shifts in the way people develop their theories. But once we started doing more academic research in it, we just sort of realized how tied dreams are to our waking day life.
Mm.
And I think just people just don't know the research because it is out there, but like so many people dream, but yet you're not taught about it in schools. What I like is was it Inside Out gave a really great description of
love
dreams. And so for me, I'm like, that's huge for the culture because you need it in the culture because the people who are trying to teach those people in the culture aren't saying it's important. But if these movies can, then it's something that we can actually be more interested in. And then the other, I think, thing is that when people have an interest or think that a dream has meaning, what do they go to? A dream dictionary. And that is not a good place to go for many reasons. And the most important one is that everyone's dream language is different. So your symbol is going to be different than my symbol. And that's because of our personal attractions or avoidance to that, whatever that is. Let's say it's a dog and say you love dogs and I hate dogs. It's going to be totally different within the dream.
How dare
and so
you?
whoever's, I'm a cat person. No, I love dogs, but let's just say, right?
Yeah.
And so people will go to that trying to figure out what their dream means, and it's telling them some wild stuff that doesn't make sense. They're like, oh, this doesn't make any sense. Dreams are meaningless. But the reality is, no, the book's meaningless. The dreams are meaningful. And you see that, especially if someone if you do any kind of research with, like someone who goes to therapy, they're just filled with imagery that the therapist can use to understand where the individual is in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And as research has shown, like we looked at, there's stuff on trauma, just like different kind of, mental disabilities. There's stuff on just like grief, as I was exploring, and all of them have some rich detail to showcase how important these dreams are to people and what they can represent in their waking day life. And I think, that is the key, is to really make it more digestible for people who really have no idea. And I think that's what this podcast will be doing for a lot of people. And that's the first way to start, is to realize that dreams are meaningful, but the dream dictionary isn't the way to go. And typing what does, a rabbit mean in Google now, because that's a new dream dictionary, it's not going to give you what you actually need and require, because a lot of the other big thing is dreams isn't about one object. It's many objects basically combined to try to tell you something or tell a story. And that takes some sort of skill set. And I think that's why it took me so long myself, because I was trying to teach myself through my dreams of what these dreams actually represented. And it took a long time. It took a long time with patience and sitting with it and trying to understand your own life, because the more you understand, the more you're aware in your own life, the easier it is to understand your dreams. But the hard part is that they're trying to tell you something that you're avoiding in waking life. And so for the most part, so that's why it can be very difficult, because it could be a truth that you just don't want to hear.
Yeah, the way you describe it is, I like it. What I'm hearing is that dreams, you said language. I think that's right. I think that it's another medium or tool with which to know self, right? To know the world and how we operate in the world. And what I'm hearing from you is like the way to sort of do that is to sit with it and to unpack it. And it's an individual path. It's not necessarily like me telling you, for example, about, and this is true, when I was a kid, I used to have a reoccurring character in a dream. The setting was different every time, but when I was a kid, there was this reoccurring floating. It was like this maybe 1 foot like floating devil creature that kind of looked like Ghoulies. Did you ever see that movie from the 80s? It's like a horror movie from the 80s, but it had this like rounded head with like these sharp little teeth. It was terrifying, and it would like follow me around. And I was also raised in sort of a strict Christian home, and so I was like, that's got to be something to do with it, right? And then scary father and all that, that's got to be something to do with it. But I guess the question is the work individually to sit with those dreams, to unpack them, to write about them, to think about them, and rather than sort of developing the skill of, I don't need to think about this, or I'm going to put this aside because I don't know what it means. It's scary. It's confusing, etc.
Well, I think it's the same thing you'd approach life with. And if you're the type of person, if you have a feeling like anxiety, do you just avoid it, or do you sit with it? And the same thing with the dreams. It's like, and there's enough research to know that many dreams are very meaningful, but you don't need to sort of interpret every dream you have. There's just this inner knowing, I think, when a dream is more meaningful than not. And that's okay. You don't have to, but like if there's one that's really staying with you, there's probably some power to it. And if you don't, let's say you avoid the first time, you're going to have the dream again and again in many different ways if it's something that you are truly avoiding. So even if you do try to avoid one, like a lot of your themes, if you actually start writing down your dreams, you'll see a theme. Like I said, like mine as a kid, I had a ton of dreams of running away.
Right.
So as much as I just put it on my mind, it just kept happening because I wasn't dealing with the waking day effects of what was causing that. And so, like I think if you just write them down and you start seeing patterns, you can start looking at your life in a new way. But that's only great if you want to look at your life. And not everyone does. And that's okay. Like just people have their own journeys that they need to go on. But if you are interested, that's a great tool because the dreams provide you a different perspective on who you are than you can when you're awake. And I think that's what I used it. And I was able to utilize a lot of those images to understand why I was feeling anxious in a situation, why I was scared, or why I was drawn towards something or someone. And those images really help really piece together some of that as I move forward. But yeah, like if someone does want to do more, it's like dream, I guess, interpretation. There are books out there that can help people understand more of how to do that in a way. But I would never go to a dream dictionary. But I always say, like, just like the easiest way is to sit with the emotions in that dream. What are the emotions? And then try to find that within your waking life and just sit with that and just like, how does this relate to each other? And you'll start pinpointing some of the stuff. Like for me, I'm afraid of something in my own home. Who could that be? Oh, well, the only one I'm afraid of is my father. Okay, so let's say now I'll put your father in the place of those people, all like the robbers or whatever. What does that mean? Oh, I'm looking for safety because I feel unsafe. Okay, there we go. And I bet you if I had that dream as a child and I learned that and sat with that, those dreams would have stopped in many ways because I now know. But before I was fully acknowledging that or talking about it. So it's just like these small things that you can really do to help yourself out and just not put so much pressure on yourself either. Like it's one thing to be interested in it, but I've seen people who like really need to know. But dreams are so fascinating, and like you could have one like tonight and feel like you understand it, but 2-3 months later you look back at it and it has a different meaning because you've changed or you have a new insight about who you are. You're like, oh, so like there's almost like levels to dreams in many ways, and that's that's interesting, right? And that's what's like a movie. There's so many levels the deeper you go in what you're seeing, like The Matrix, right? You could see it as an action movie or you could see it as something else.
Mm-hmm. What is the research around like, well, actually, let me rephrase that. Like, how often are you, Joshua, dreaming? And by that, I mean, like, how often are you remembering, you wake up, you remember your dream pretty vividly?
That's actually a really good question because it is about remembering dreams, and we're all dreaming. It's just some people are remembering more dreams than others. And so for me personally, it's around 3 dreams a week.
Wow.
Yeah. So the average is around 1 or 2. But what's interesting is if you start writing down your dreams and start valuing your dreams, they become more frequent. You remember them more often. And so I remember doing this like when I first learned about this in university. And I was around 3 dreams at that moment too. And I started writing down the dreams, and I was really, not only exploring, but I was just like really just writing them down and say, okay, let's see how this works. And I started remembering 4, 5, 6. Then I was remembering like 3 dreams a night. And I'm like, this is way too much. So I stopped actually keeping a dream journal at that point. And I only wrote down ones that were more meaningful to me at that time. And I think now they've reduced a lot because I'm really self-aware from doing what I've been doing of my everyday life. And so they don't pull me as much as they once did. They don't need them as often. But I remember during the pandemic, I thought I was doing really great. And then all of a sudden I had this dream where I was eating shards of glass from a chandelier and it was getting stuck in my throat and I was panicking. And I woke up with like this deep sweat. It was the first time I had a nightmare in, 4 or 5 years. It was like, because I was just so aware, always looking for like, what can I do? Like, how can I sort of sit with this? And so that was the first time I had something like that. I'm like, what am I missing in waking life? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And then we're in the pandemic, but I thought I was doing okay. Like, I thought I was doing fine. And then so I really sat with that. I'm like, what is a chandelier? Like, that's like the key to all of this. And so I'm like, okay, chandelier gives light to a large room. Like, what else is that does that? That's in my world right now. And I was thinking and thinking, and I'm like, oh, like news gives information to like a country. Like this kind of fits. I'm like, I'm taking the news and ingesting it, and it's getting caught in my throat. Like, does that make sense to me? I'm like, yes, because at that time, as much as I was feeling okay, I was looking at the news, I don't know, 10 times a day. Like it was right in the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I didn't think it was actually affecting me, but it was. And I had to sit with the truth that I was ingesting what the writers were intending in their piece, which is a lot of anxiety and fear for the most part. And I wasn't able to digest it as I thought I was. And so I had to take a hold stop. And I said, okay, what do I need to feel safe? And I wrote the things, first one, toilet paper. Next, and then like I listed the things I needed, and like how often do you really need to look at the news to feel prepared for whatever is coming? And I was like, okay, like we'll have Instagram, like I still do these other apps, and if something happened, like everyone was going to share about it anyway. So I was like, okay, maybe once a day, let's try with that. And I'm like, okay, when's a good time? Maybe lunch. That gives me time to digest, and it's not right at night, and it doesn't affect me in the morning. And so I started doing that, and the anxieties went away. I felt better, which is nice, but I never had those nightmares ever again when it relates to that. So for me, it was just like I took a moment. I realized, wait a second, this is really weird. This is different than a lot of my other imagery, which tends to be more neutral or fun. This was showing me something I was actually missing, and so I changed that, and I was able to get back to a better baseline, which is really helpful because then you can actually approach and help people in their stress and anxiety and have a better, safer place, and not give advice that is biased through that lens that you don't even realize is affecting you.
So part of what I'm hearing you're saying is like, and maybe this is an assumption based on what you just said or an extrapolation. Will people who, may need to sort of do more of that self-awareness work in their waking life have more dreams because of that, or have more, memorable dreams because of that?
It's a good question. I don't know. Like, there's going to be some people that just have a fancy for dreams. Other people can be more self-aware, but still don't care about dreams. There is 10% of the population that just doesn't remember dreaming, even though they are. Yeah. And so, I think it's really based upon their biases going in, because they all, like, we get drawn towards certain things. For me, it was dreams. Someone else, it could be like movies or nature or something, could give them what they're looking for a little bit more. But I think it's something that if you're interested in dreams and you're also interested in being self-aware, I think they can combine together, and you have the ability to remember your dreams. And you start. Yeah. So I think there is something there. I don't know how strong that relationship truly is, but sure. I wouldn't doubt that it would increase given the fact that you are trying to learn more about yourself. Right, and this is now a potential tool to be able to utilize. If you don't see it as a tool, I can't see it actually being increased in any kind of nature. But once you realize it's a tool, I would say the mind would try to utilize that to help you. And I will say too, so if someone's so you can increase your dream recall, but you can also decrease it. So after I stopped writing down those dreams, my dream recall has been around 3 a week now. So it's really interesting to understand that our dreams, our frequency isn't set in stone.
And what is the crossover between like dream research and like sleep research? Are you into that world, or is it completely separate?
Well, they do parallel each other in many ways, because you need to know about sleep to know about dreams. But what's interesting is people who are sleep researchers sometimes don't really care about the dreams, but dreams researchers really care about sleep in a lot of ways. And one of the issues is because when a sleep researcher does studies, and a lot of times they wake you up in different phases of sleep, they get a lot of bland dreams because they're not dreams that you would normally have remembered. So they get dreams that seem meaningless because they probably are. And so they don't really see these really exciting dreams that we as dream researchers actually see, like these dreams of the deceased. You're not going to catch that by waking someone up.
Right.
This happens in its own time, its own moment, based on whenever you're ready for it or your mind produces it. And it can change someone. And like that in itself that dream gets dream researchers excited, but you're not going to catch that in the sleep lab. So I think a lot of times, if you're in a sleep lab, you don't learn much about dreams other than the basics of how like dreams relate to waking life, and like you have more dreams in REM than non-REM, but you're still dreaming in REM, and there's still a lot to learn about that. But when it comes to funding, a lot of people in sleep research aren't getting funded to study dreams. They're getting funded to study sleep, other aspects of sleep, because there's not a lot of sleep organizations out there that are actually doing the research, and it's so hard to get participants. So like there's still, if more money was, I think, put into sleep research, you'd probably get a lot more people wanting to study dreams in there, but they're almost two different fields in a way,
right?
Where you have the dream researchers and you have the sleep researchers.
Makes sense. I was just curious because my wife has night terrors, Joshua. So she has them probably, I don't know.
Wow.
A couple times a month, I would say, and sometimes they're pretty sparing, where she gets up and she says something, real loud, and then she goes back to bed. Other times, she's opened the front door, she's like almost crawled out of a second floor window. Sometimes and it's always like she's trying to like affect or impact or wrangle some creatures that are crawling on the wall. It's very vivid. Wow. And what is hard for me, obviously, is it wakes me up. But two is like often I'm the bad guy that has to like turn on the lights to show her that like, sorry, the reality you're living in is no longer. And it's always like like it might have been scary for her, but it's also like,
That's interesting because night terrors for the dreamer, they don't really remember having them. It's more of the thing is for those who are beside them or parents, because kids have a lot of them. But with what's going on here, it seems that there's sleepwalking going on, some sleep talking, then there's some, so it's probably something else other than like a night terror. It's probably a different type of sleep disorder, because there are other ones where people are acting out certain things and then they can remember them in many ways. So yeah, that's sad, because that's a hard position for the dreamer to be in, because you're moving without control. Right? There's no conscious control, and that can be very scary for so many reasons. Safety is the main one,
right?
And like, how do you support yourself so you don't kill yourself,
right,
by accident, right? Like, because
for sure.
there's been things like people have driven cars, while like basically sleeping while they're sleepwalking. It's absolutely fascinating. We don't fully understand it at all.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's something that there is some medication for and stuff. Some of the precipitating factors like stress, big one, alcohol is another big one.
Yeah.
And sleep deprivation in itself. And so but that's like the main like precipitating factors for a lot of sleep disorders in general. Yeah. And then for you, it's like, how do you maintain your own safety in that situation? And how do you help the person that you love to feel safe too? And so it's a very difficult position to be a part of. But I said, like, there are medications out there and stuff now that can actually help in that area. But yeah, it's something that I would just, based on hearing that, I would recommend seeing a sleep specialist, just because there are treatments for that. And there are things you can learn to help minimize how frequent they happen. And then just with that, your mind will start relaxing, because if you don't understand that, and there's always a possibility that can happen, you're going to bed anxious, and that's actually going to cause it to happen more often.
Totally.
And so, right. So it's like, it's this weird thing. Like, you kind of need it. It's like same thing with like these negative dreams of deceased too. Like, there's a lot of people who have them, and they're afraid to go to sleep because they don't want to see the deceased either dying again or chasing them. And so what happens is they sleep deprive themselves, and then they finally go to sleep and they have it again. And so it becomes very repeated. And so they sleep deprive themselves, but that's one of the probably main causes that's causing even more of that, because they're more stressed. Their body's more stressed, and they can't deal with their grief even in waking day. And so the dreams are trying to process your grief, but you're minimizing what your mind can do when you're awake. So it's a tough situation for a lot of people, but it's just understanding the more we know, the less stress that we can have, and that can actually help as we move forward.
I'm going to talk to Jessica, my wife, just directly now. So first of all, I'm going to make you listen to this podcast, because you never do, and I'm going to make you listen to this exact moment, the lesson, the directive that Dr. Joshua Black has given you an actual doctor, not a sleep doctor, and he's not your doctor, Jessica, but it's a professional opinion, and it's also my opinion that you should get this checked out because I care about you and I don't want to have to like roofie you or something.
No, yeah, you don't want to. You want her to be able to feel safe going to bed and to feel more refreshed because the amount of stress that she would feel moving forward. I remember teaching because I taught a sleep course in university. I remember talking about like sleepwalking, and most people aren't even aware. Like they'll do it, they'll come back, and they're not even aware that they even went anywhere.
Right.
And I remember the one student said, I wonder if that's happening to me. I was like, well, talk about your situation. She's like, well, every day I go to sleep and then I wake up and the lights are always on. And I always yell at my roommates for turning the lights on and leaving the lights on. But she said, like last week, no one was in the house. I went to bed and the lights were on. She's like, I think I'm turning the lights on. I was like, so it was like one of those real moments when someone realizes, wait a second, I think I'm the one that's been doing that. And then she felt really bad for criticizing her roommates. But then, she had the information to then go seek more information, maybe seek some help, understand like what's actually going on there. But yeah, it's scary. Like I know people will eat, I don't know personally them, but I know like not only your safety when it comes to driving and moving around, but also what you digest. Like people have digested poison and they cooked up nails. Like there's a lot of things that you can do while you're sleepwalking that can be very harmful to you and your survival. So, and mental well-being. So, and so, yeah, at the end of the day, I think it's just very important to get that checked out.
Yeah. You hear that, Jessica? This is the final word. Okay. So Joshua, help me understand you describe your sort of grief or your bereavement dream with your dad, but like for the sort of the folks listening, like how do you describe it? How do you describe it to people who are trying to figure it out for themselves, like what it is, what they're experiencing, in their loss?
So when it comes to the dreams itself, it's first understanding, I think, dreams in general, which we talked about, which is dreams reflect a waking life. And so it's going to reflect our grief in a lot of ways.
Right.
And to understand a little bit about trauma and dreams, in general, when it comes to we talked about how most people in general, on average, will have negative dreams. Just in general, whatever. After trauma, people will have even more consistently negative dreams. So it's a great, important moment where you're like, okay, so grief. So when after someone died, you're expected to have more negative dreams to reflect your emotions are occurring. And so it should give you some normalization of what's going on and realize it's part of the grieving process. And you can learn a lot from even negative dreams about how you're doing and maybe what you're trying to tackle while you're asleep. Because what the mind is trying to do is actually, I would say it's like your best friend. It's trying to digest this stuff, help you process, and maybe help show you what you can do when you're awake to help it out. So it doesn't have to do all the work kind of thing. And so you kind of just reframe a nightmare into something that actually is trying to tell me something rather than it's trying to make me afraid.
Right.
And so, but what's interesting is when we look at dreams of the deceased, my research has shown that those dreams tend to be more positive than negative, which is actually really strange given the past research. So there's something going on when the deceased is a part of the imagery that is different. It's almost acting differently than typical dreams. I think a lot of people then have different theories on that. And I think that in itself is very interesting. So like just in one study after spells loss, you ask people if they've had, positive dreams of the deceased, and you sort of like categorize them and you make it more scientific than just positive dreams. Anyways, they'll say around like 90% of them had at least one positive dream of deceased. And then when it comes to a negative dream, it was around, 40%. And those things are hugely different. And I was going in expecting the opposite, to tell you the truth, just based on the research. And then when you look at after pet loss, I did one after pet loss, same kind of stats for positive dreams, but negative dreams around 20%. And then even miscarriages. And so when you look at that a little bit further, and we also looked at we notice that people who have a positive dream tend to just continually have a positive dream. People who have a negative dream will also tend to have a positive dream too. So what that's, I think, showcasing is that my theory, we have to do more longitudinal research, but what I'm thinking is going on is people will have more negative dreams in the beginning of loss because they're really trying to digest it. And especially with those dying again dreams that people have, or seeing the deceased suffering, which is kind of the last images a lot of people do have.
Right.
You're trying to digest it, but as you process that, those dreams will turn to something a little bit more positive.
Right.
And so, and what can we take away from these dreams? Well, these dreams can have a huge impact on many people's grieving process. So the negative dreams we already talked about. A lot of people can be afraid. A lot of people it hinders their sleep, which could just be so detrimental to the grieving process. Like, people don't understand like how important sleep is to problem solving. That's what really grief is for the most part. But also your immune system, your emotions, how you see the world, your memory, all that sort of stuff, right? And that's all the things you need while you're going through such a traumatic time. But these positive dreams, like, what can we learn about that? And I think there's a lot of beauty in that I learned just from my own, but they can really help us continue these bonds with the deceased. And you don't have to be, the amazing thing is, people who are spiritual and people who aren't are having very similar dreams. So it's not just those people who believe in an afterlife that are having, these positive dreams. No, everyone is. And like, that's so cool to me. So it's a human experience that's going on, and there's something being processed in there. And I've done some research on continuing bonds and like what that means, remembering people and making moments, to remember them, how it can be helpful in the grieving process. And so these moments are doing that in many ways. So you can have, and one of the moments that I really like to sort of showcase here is the importance of love, that I don't think people understand so much in the grieving process. And those are some quotes out there, but the most common theme of all the positive themes that people have is this, with the deceased either saying or providing some sort of environment that the person's loved, or the dreamer expressing the love to the deceased. So basically that's what happened with my father, and my dad hugging me was a sense of love also. But you see this is such a common theme. Like, it's crazy how common it is. And you're like, what's going on here? Because if it's happening in so many people's dreams across cultures, it's got to be meaningful. And I think a part of the grief process that I've learned just by looking at these dreams is one of the factors is that it goes back to actually with the dream I had with the ex-partner that broke up with me. It was the importance of how we see ourselves and how we love ourselves. And when someone dies, one of the big truths is that person usually provided us some sort of love that we have a hard time giving ourselves. That includes animals, kids, right? Like, they all give us something that makes our life a little bit easier in how we see ourselves. And so these dreams can really facilitate that to continue on, and to remind ourselves that we still have love within us, and we still can have these moments of love. And so, that's just something I love talking about, because it makes people rethink about, wait a second. Yeah, like, that person really not only provided me a lot of new moments and helped me cope with the times I felt low about who I was or stressed about the world. They were the ones that would provide that support. They would tell me that it was going to be okay, that they were going to be there for me. And it's so scary. We're facing a world that's full of new moments that's going to provoke that. And you're alone. And these dreams, I feel, can really provide us the courage to face those new moments moving forward, and to keep that love within ourselves. And people who are spiritual will tend to say that the individual is always with us and always is loving me and always going to be there to help support me. I think that's beautiful. And if you're not spiritual, you can still remember that love still exists within you, even if you don't have that. Like, it's a part of you. And I like to say, if you're dreaming about it, like, there's something to that it's still there. It's not making up something new. No, it's taking something from within you and expanding it. And so how can we get there? And so it's something that I think people can do a little bit more of, and seeing almost who the individual was in a larger extent into their lives. But also that I think a lot of people have the ability to learn to love themselves in a new way, and almost see themselves as the deceased used to see them. And I think that's a very beautiful thing. Like, imagine seeing yourself in the mirror like your dog saw you, or like your wife or your mother saw you. Like that is just it. For a lot of people, they hesitate. Like, I don't know if I ever could do that, but I think it is possible in many levels. But it just takes small steps, like what I had to do.
I want to love myself the way that my dog Scooby loved me. The best. He passed in April, and it's been fucking hard. He was best friend. Yeah. But I love that, Joshua. It's really beautiful. I love that emphasis on love. And I also love that dreams can be, they're part of us, right? They're part of our makeup. They're part of our bodies. They're part of our brains and hearts. And it's just about sort of awareness and acceptance and patience with it, and knowing that, I always say this, and knowing that like we are all worth sort of exploring and being curious about the stuff that's in our worlds, because the more curiosity and exploration and critical thinking we can do about this stuff, the more it comes back to us, the more it fills us with that awareness and love, right? And then the more we can reflect that outward, as you know.
No, that's beautiful. No, that's really great. And so I'm sad to hear that your dog died. That's shitty. But I'm really glad that he looked at you in such a way that, you felt love. And there's, it's not all dogs. I think most dogs would, as long as you treat them nice. But like, it's something that I've really tried to promote doing the research, is the important, like how valid pet loss is. And it's still something in our culture that a lot of people diminish and disenfranchise in many ways. But just looking at the dreams are very similar to the dreams of a spouse. And you look at the grief is very similar to the grief of the spouse. So in many dimensions, you sort of see that, no, it's a valid thing that we need to sort of start talking about. We need to have support groups for people like that, which we just don't. Yeah. And I think, just talking about it allows other people who don't have animals, or maybe just don't know, that there's an important connection there that got severed.
Yeah.
And their grief is going to be very similar in many ways to you losing someone that you loved. And, to have compassion, listen, because you can learn a lot from someone about those moments. And they're going to be different, right? Like, I know a lot of the dreams when it comes to pets, you never hear, there's only actually one dream I've seen with a pet that the pet actually talked. And the dog said that it was okay to get another dog. So the person was debating in their mind. But for the most part, for the most part, a lot of dreams are they're just like the animal you're cuddling, you're going for a walk, you're visiting a park, like you're doing some of the things you used to do, which is very different from with, humans, where it's a lot of talking is going on. That's, you don't really sort of see in the pet loss dreams. It's more of it's just a being together aspect, because talking was never a big thing. Maybe they'll bark or something, but unless it was like a funny thing, it's really just the two people together and providing sort of that moment. And I will say, I think we haven't talked about it yet, but it's very common for people of all ages to have dreams of the deceased, pets or deceased people. And, they're really high. Like, I didn't know how frequent this actually is, this experience. But after spells of loss, within the first 2 years, 86% of people had a dream of the deceased. After pet loss, it was 78% within the first 6 months. And after a miscarriage, it was 57%. And the miscarriage is interesting because they've never actually met the child or the baby before, but they're having dreams as if the baby's there, the child's there. And I think it's fascinating because it's giving them a moment that they never had. So it's not a memory, it's something different. And so I think this is just, it just makes this a field that we need to know more about, but it's very mysterious. I kind of like that because there's a lot of room to just sit in that.
Yeah, I love that. And you're right about just grief as a whole. Like, we as a culture need to do a better job of creating space to grieve and to grieve openly and safely and all that stuff. And your work is part of that space, which is wonderful. Yeah. And I will just say, because I didn't say it before, I'm sorry for your loss, Joshua. Like, losing your dad, like, that is also shitty, and I'm sorry.
It was, and I look at it, I'm like, I would never have chose that, but that moment, actually was probably the biggest catalyst for me to be here. And, you know, I like to sort of, sounds kind of weird, but I like to sort of imagine that it was like my dad's last gift to me that he could never give me while alive because he never had the emotional intelligence to, I guess the best way to put it, to provide me the moment to start seeing the world in a different way and seeing grief in a new way. Because I don't know who I'd be. Like, I'd still be searching in a lot of ways, and I would never really understand where people are. I wouldn't have the meaning I have in my own life now. Like doing the research, so like I've been like doing my own sort of the Grief Dreams podcast, like talking to the bereaved. Like, I love that. There's something so beautiful about holding this space that I never would have really known or had a moment to do prior. So, you know, in a weird way, you know, the timing of his death, I look at as just a moment that completely gave me new life in a way. And it allowed me to also explore my relationships with my father in a different light. And so I love him more than I ever did before, which is a weird thing, but I also know more about him than I ever did before. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's just grief is weird because you have these things and you're like, wow, like I'm a better person for it, even though I really miss him in many ways. Yeah. But, you know, he gave me something that no one else could have given me. I was never, you know, there's something deep about, you know, the bond with a parent. So even though I was still developing that, I believe there's something as a kid, I still admired as that dream I had in the beginning, saying you keep doing like stuff like that. You know, I want to look up to you. And I think that's a child looking up to a father. I want to look up to you. I really do. And it's just sitting with all that and saying, you know, like, you know, I continue to love my father every day. And that's something I wouldn't have said when he was alive. Which is, you know, it's strange, and you just keep it all open, and you keep seeing your grief in new ways as you move forward. Yeah. But I appreciate you know, acknowledging the difficulties of his death in my life.
Yeah, of course. Well, this stuff is endlessly fascinating. I could probably talk to you, Joshua, for ages, for hours, but I think we should transition into empathy heroes. So This is the part of the show, listeners, where my guest and I name an empathy hero in our lives. It could be someone we know personally, someone who has passed, even characters from stories, movies, etc. I'll go first, even though I didn't plan one this week. I'm just going to come up with one as I'm talking these words out of my mouth. My empathy hero this week. What happened? Oh, I'll just name my friend Josh, who I've probably named before as my empathy hero this week. But my friend Josh, goes by Josh, not Joshua, is... is someone I've known since we were 5, and we went surfing yesterday morning, and we were just reflecting on that. We're both 40 now. We've known each other for 35 years, and he is someone I care about deeply, and I think about a lot. And it's funny, friendship. Like we knew each other as, you know, in kindergarten. We were friends through elementary school, and then high school, college, we went separate ways and we did different things and we weren't really in touch. And then we sort of came back together in our, I guess, 30s, not until our 30s really. And, you know, it just goes to show like that deep bond we had as kids. And he, you know, I know he loves me and I appreciate that, because when you're a person like me who has clinical depression and feels very unloved most of the time, when I am with Josh, I do feel seen and heard, and it's just great. And so I was grateful to surf with him this week, and that's why he's my empathy hero.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah, thanks.
So for me, we're just going to do this week, I would say I don't know you, but you provide a space that I felt heard and seen, and I could sort of really feel the empathy to allow me to sort of talk about things a little bit more real, a little more different. And you cared a lot about the grief journey and some of the mental health parts, where in some other interviews it's more about the grief dream stuff and the research and like know more about that, not your own experiences. I don't know what the research says, but you're like the opposite. You're interested in the research, but you're more here to see me and to talk to me, the person, not the researcher.
The human.
And so the human, you came at me like a human would. And so I appreciate that. And so I'll pick you.
Ah, that's sweet. I appreciate that. And it's how I want to show up in the world always, right? For people. Like we need that, we need to see and hear and create space for people. So yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. So Joshua, where can the Feely Humans connect with you, listen to your podcast, all of that stuff?
So the easiest way to do it is just go on griefdreams.ca, and all the information's on there. I got Instagram at Grief Dreams. I got what else I got? I got the podcast, Grief Dreams Podcast, but the website, you'll see a lot of information. Like if you're interested in the topic, there's a common questions, which is a great page for people to learn more about the scientific aspects of these dreams and what I found throughout doing the research. And there's also a section where it's about in the common culture where you see these dreams portrayed, and there's a lot of places, and every year there's multiple movies that showcase these types of dreams, which I think is fascinating. So for me, I look at that as like the culture is trying to tell us it's important, but the researchers haven't got to it. And so I'm really happy to be able to provide a space for people to just normalize the experience, so they don't get bad advice from other people, because this is such a new topic in the field of grief. So that's a big thing. And then there's a couple online courses. One's on grief dreams, of course, but another one's on romantic relationships.
Nice. Very cool. Well, listeners, all of those links will be in the show notes for this episode at feelyhuman.co. Joshua, thank you for being a part of this. I really enjoyed learning more about you and learning about the research you do. And thank you for the work you do.
I appreciate that. Thank you for having me on and having a place for people to just be themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And to you listeners, as I always say, I'm here, you're here, we're here together on this wayward, overwhelming, awe-inspiring, pale blue dot. We have each other. It's you, me, empathy.